Oh, okay. Yeah, if it does go out, I created a whole other backup where it's just like so that my face isn't like an extreme close up, because Restream does the default thing where it. Okay, yeah, I think that'll work. Yeah, absolutely. One minute. Hey everybody, Dragon Movie Guy here. Welcome back to the Dragon Movie Guy podcast. This today is going to be a little bit of an experiment. Going to try talking about some news headlines from this past week for the week of May 19th, 2023. And figured this would just be an experiment to see how you guys like it, see how this all fits together, doing the topic du jour, topic du the week. see what comes of it, and see if we can have some fun. Joining me in this experimental podcast in the news you can use. I don't know if that title will stick or not, but joining me for this news you can use episode of Dragon Movie Guy podcast is a friend of the channel. He is the man behind Pierce Productions, the YouTube channel, the TikTok channel, if you were. It is Trace Pierce of Pierce Productions. Trace, welcome back to Dragon Movie Guy. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored that I got a second return to the Dragon Movie Guy podcast, YouTube channel. It's such an honor, and I just love talking movies with you. Like, it's just what more to pass the time for an hour or hour and a half? I mean, there's no better way. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. It's fun to be able to talk about our favorite pastimes and the things that entertain us, and put that little zest into life, and especially as we're entering summer movie season now, and all of the things that are going on in Hollywood and everything in the entertainment industry. So, shall we start? Shall we begin, as they say?
I think we should. What is the first topic on the roster for today?
Yes, the first topic in our quiver of arrow quiver is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It is week number 2, and it was number 1 at the box office for the second week in a row. It made $60.5 million, combining for a total of over $500 million in the first 2 weeks. And it is scheduled to... has made over $528 million globally so far. And surprisingly, it only had a 49% drop-off in week 2. Most big blockbusters nowadays try and saturate theaters as much as possible, and then for whatever reason, the public tends to drop off on the box office at a relatively predictable rate. Usually it's 55-60%, but Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 had a 49% drop, which is a lot better than most films. So, what are your thoughts on this box office figure for Guardians of the Galaxy? Does it surprise you? And have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy already?
So I have seen Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes, great movie, fantastic trilogy. I'm sad, but I'm also happy. I'm sad that we're not going to be getting any more James Gunn movies in Marvel, but we're going to be getting them in DC, so that makes me happy. So, as far as the box office goes, I don't understand how people are saying that this was a failure. I mean, it opened north of $100 million, which a lot of movies would kill to have. John Wick 4, in comparison, a month earlier, granted, it doesn't have the same budget of Guardians 3, but I mean, the more and more those John Wick movies go on, the budget keeps rising because the stakes got to be higher. Anyway, I'm using that comparison because John Wick 4 had the biggest opening of like, I think it was between 60 and $68 million, but everyone called it such a success. And then when Guardians opens to double that at almost 120 million, I think it opened to 117 if I'm not mistaken domestically.
I believe so,
Somehow that was a failure, and with a 49% drop, movies would kill to have a 49% drop. I mean, usually you're looking in the 60% range, like you just said, because everyone goes to see it the first weekend. But what they need is for people, one, to spread the word of mouth, and then two, to come back and watch it twice, watch it 3 times, and to tell their friends, hey, you didn't like Ant-Man and Thor, but you know what? This Guardians one, I think you should check this one out. And I just think that for people to paint this number as a bad number is silly. It's an extraordinary number. It's a good box office. It's a little bit shy of 600 million right now, but we're in the second week. This thing's going to go on for another probably 4 or 5 weeks.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And it is worth pointing out that the budget for this film was $250-ish million, which is higher than the previous 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies. So the more you spend, the more you got to make. But
it's also true, yeah.
But obviously James Gunn has a really good track history with box office numbers, and anytime the MCU comes along, I think as we saw last weekend, nothing major came out trying to not get steamrolled by the MCU. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this upcoming weekend. Well, first off, do you how many times have you seen Guardians so far, and are you recommending it to people to watch in theaters? Is it worth their money?
So as of now, I've seen it once. I do want to see it again before it leaves theaters, and I am telling people that they should check this one out. So the people that these movies need to come to the theater are the people that are not you and me. You and me, we go to almost every movie. We're going to see it regardless. But what they need is they need people like my mom to go to these movies, because those are the people that are the quote unquote average movie fan. Me and you are above average. So I told people like my mom, I said, hey, like, she loves the Guardians movies, and I told her this one was good. So it's like, it's people like that, the word of mouth like that is what gets these movies higher and higher in the box office. And while I don't see this thing making more than Guardians 2, which made 886 million, I believe. I could be wrong, but it made north of 800 million. I do see this coming in more along the lines of 750, which is a success in my eyes.
Absolutely. Anytime a movie can make that much money, it's a win in my book, and especially when you figure if the budget was roughly 250 million, the general rule of thumb is you have to make twice that in order to break even. So if it does come in at 750 million ish, then that should be considered a financial success.
And the reviews were positive.
Yeah,
So it's not like this thing got panned.
I do think that the commercials that were saying that this is the best Marvel movie since Endgame is a little inaccurate. I thought it's a really good film, but I thought, just in my personal opinion, I think that Spider-Man No Way Home was a better film in terms of being best movie since Endgame. What do you think? Is this the best Marvel movie since Endgame?
It's pretty close to Spider-Man. I think I love the Guardians, but I think I'm more of a fan of Spider-Man in general. So I'm going to give the edge to Spider-Man No Way Home. But in terms of best superhero movie since Endgame, that is going to The Flash. But
True.
We're talking about Marvel, so I'm going to say No Way Home. But in terms of just in general superhero movies since Endgame, I'm excited for people to see The Flash.
I am too, and I also think the Flash is better than Guardians 3, but they're both really good films. So definitely
They're both really good.
Yeah, definitely both worth watching in theaters. Kind of moving on to our second topic, somewhat related by design. Fast and the Furious 10, which is the 11th movie in the series. I can't believe there's this many Fast and Furious movies. It is scheduled to, or the predictions that Deadline is making is that the Fast and Furious 10 will make $300 million opening weekend, with roughly 65 of that coming here in the States and 200 and some odd million worldwide. Do you think Fast and Furious 10 Fast X will do that well at the box office?
So I have a lot of numbers here that I have set aside in preparation for this. So first off, if the movie opens to a weekend of over 300 million worldwide, that's excellent. That's almost as much as Black Adam made. That's more than Shazam made, and that's just a success for something that's in the 11th movie in the franchise. Come on, like that's insane. But let's look at these numbers here. They're saying that it's going to open to 60 to 65 million dollars worldwide, and some people are saying like, oh, Fast and Furious has run out of gas. They should just close up shop and give up, because F9 opened to $70 million, F8 opened to $97 million, Furious 7 in 2015 opened to $147 million, which is the highest in the franchise, and Fast and Furious 6 opened to $97 million. So, if I did my math correctly, there is a downward trajectory, but all of these movies have made over $700 million, one of which opened during the pandemic, still made over $700 million, and two of these movies crossing the billion-dollar mark. Now, if anyone is saying that $60 million is worrisome, let's go back and look at Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw in 2019 with arguably the biggest movie star in the world, Dwayne Johnson. Do you want to take a guess what that movie opened up to?
Oh, gosh. 80 million?
And do you want to take a guess on how much it made worldwide?
Ooh, it's usually times two for the worldwide gross. So I would say 80 domestically, 160 internationally, for 240 worldwide. That would be my guess.
So Hobbs and Shaw opened to $60 million, which is on par with what Fast and Furious 10 is said to be opening to. The movie went on to make $760 million worldwide. So it doesn't need to open to $200 million to make its budget back and then some. This movie can open to $60 million and still be a success. And I think we're just living in an age right now where if a movie doesn't make $150 million opening in the first weekend, people think that there's something wrong. This is the 11th movie in the franchise, and the last one the reviews for the last one were not good. Let's just call it as it is. F9 was a bad movie.
It put the F
So
in
I
F9.
think that, yeah, so I think that is also another reason why maybe we're seeing a $60 million opening, where if F9 was really good, maybe like Furious 7 was, maybe then we're looking at a 95 to $100 million opening.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think too that we also have to keep in mind that Furious 7 was the last one with Paul Walker, and everyone knew going into that film's release that obviously Paul Walker had died. So there's the, well, what is that movie going to be like factor. I think that was boosting the box office to a certain extent in a sort of weirdly, oddly morbid way. And then Fast 8 coming out, what is the first movie without Paul Walker going to be like? What are they going to do with his character in terms of running him off? And you're right too. The last two films though, Hobbs and Shaw and Fast 9, they're children of the pandemic to a certain extent. So it will be really interesting to see how people react to Fast 10. Is it going to be a diminished law of diminishing returns sort of factor, especially when people know it's going to be coming to an end, but not coming to an end yet? And yet, it's gone from being a two-movie ending to now being a trilogy
Now a
ending.
trilogy.
So,
But
it's really impossible to really tell with Fast and Furious until it comes in, until it actually hits theaters and the rubber meets the road.
I mean, I really didn't like F9. Like, I really didn't like it, but I'm still interested in the franchise, and I'm really interested in Jason Momoa's character. The way that they've shown him in the trailers, I can't be the only one that's like, man, he looks like a fun villain. Like, I think they're doing that on purpose. I think that they had a really good character written for Jason Momoa, and they're really letting that shine in the trailers. He's all over the trailers. And whereas uh, Furious 8 is the first one that had Cypher with Charlize Theron, and while she was in the trailer, they did not. I recall the trailers. They did not show what type of villain she was to the extent that they are with Jason Momoa, because I think they know that they have a good character of Jason Momoa in this movie.
Yeah, and it's sort of one of those interesting things too. Like, how do you replace Paul Walker as the lead, as a lead character in a film like Fast and Furious, and instead of replacing with another pretty boy along the veins of Paul Walker, they've gone with the sort of they've gone with the beefcake, similar type to Vin Diesel, with John Cena, and with Jason Momoa, the big burly men of few words and testosterone and punching and
Well,
fighting. So
listen, I mean, even
it's
Jason
fun.
Statham, he doesn't look like The Rock, but Jason Statham can throw down as well.
Yeah, but he's got the British accent, so that accounts for at least 30 pounds of muscle all in the upper body. Like, it's just, interesting point too. You bring up Charlize Theron, Oscar-winning actress, one of my favorite actresses. Yeah, I was not. I was not a huge fan of her character in Fast 8. I don't know what I was expecting, and maybe it's just because it was different than what I was expecting. Yeah, her character didn't pull me over either. So seeing her in the trailers for this one, I'm like, really? They're bringing back Charlize Theron
She was in number
again?
9 too. I don't really know what they're trying to do with this character.
Yeah, I mean,
It seems like they're kind of just dragging it out.
yeah, it just kind of seems like they're putting more and more celebrities onto an ever increasing size bus of celebrities that's fueled by NOS, apparently, and the fact that we're
Well,
even adding.
you were talking about Guardians budget being 250. If I'm wrong, that's fine, but I'm pretty sure this one's over 300.
Yeah,
300 million
it wouldn't surprise me,
for
but I think it's just because Guardians has so much CGI in it, and obviously Fast and Furious has some as well, but I don't think to the nearly the same extent of the budget for the CGI in Fast and Furious as big as Guardians of the Galaxy.
no,
I
but
would
I think
guess.
that I think that the reason why we're seeing a $300 million price tag to make this movie is because they're adding so many stars, and each person wants a piece of the pie, in
Yeah,
terms of box office points, or maybe Brie Larson's like, okay, I'll come in for 2 weeks, but I want $11 million. It's like
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think any of the celebrities showing up for a Fast and Furious movie are saying, "Well, I'm going to cut my rates because I think this is going to win the Cannes Film Festival, the Palme d'Or."
No, they're getting paid.
Yeah,
They're definitely, and Vin Diesel's getting paid
yeah,
because
as
he's
they,
also a producer, so he's making money on that too, on that side of
absolutely,
it.
as they should be. Have you seen Fast X already?
No, I will see it on Friday, so a couple days.
So if you're recommending to people what to watch this weekend, what would you suggest? Fast and Furious 10 or Guardians 3?
It's tough to say because I haven't seen Fast and Furious, but I'm gonna just go ahead and go with Fast and Furious only because Guardians is now going on its third week. So at this point, I can't recommend it over a new movie that looks like it could be fun. I mean, yeah, there was 3 weeks to watch Guardians.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. And unless someone is looking for a different style of film, if it comes down to two action films, I would be recommending Fast and Furious 10 as
I
well,
mean,
which I have not seen as well. But I did love Guardians, but newer is always better in some respects. So so both you and I think are on the list for Fast X this weekend. I love the Fast X thing, the P90X of it all. Um, moving on to our third story. You're based in LA. The writers, a lot of the Hollywood writers are based in LA. There's 11,000 Writers Guild of America writers on strike, largely in New York, LA, and Atlanta. Have you seen any any striking writers around LA? I mean, 11,000 sounds like a lot, but when you divide them up into three different cities, and I grew up in Seattle, so I'm used to 30 or 40,000 Boeing workers going on strike, and those strike lines, those picket lines are impossible to miss. So, have you seen any striking writers around LA? I mean, are they picketing Starbucks in between screenplay breaks? Have you seen anything on the ground in LA from the writer's strike?
so no, they're not picketing. I'm not seeing anybody outside Starbucks or anything like that. But I am maybe 10 or 15 minutes from some of the studios, such as Universal and Paramount and stuff like that. And if you drive by there, you're going to see them all over the place picketing, which it's their right to do so. And that's where you'll see them. So, like, I'm like 10 or 15 minutes away from all that right now. The area of town that I'm in, well, the neighborhood that I'm in, we're not seeing that because it's more of a suburban area. But the more that you go closer to the studios, they're right out front of it. And yeah, it's just, I don't see this going on as long as the 2008 writer's strike. That one went on for 3 months. Now, unfortunately, we're in week three of this. If I believe this is week
Yep,
three.
week three.
I don't, yeah, I don't see this going on past week five. I think that everyone's going to come to their senses and say, you know what? These writers actually do deserve to make a fair amount, and maybe they do deserve health care. Like, I think that I think that everyone's going to come to their senses sooner rather than later. I don't see this dragging on for a couple more months. I really hope that I'm correct here, because that would completely suck if this goes on for 3 months again, like in 2008 or even longer.
Yeah. So what do you think? do you think the writers will get a good chunk of their demands? Like, do you think that mini rooms will go away in terms of writers' rooms? Do you think that instead of being paid by episode, they will find new statistics or ways to do to handle revenue sharing? Because obviously, if you're paid by the episode and there aren't as many episodes, and when you talk about residuals, there are no residuals when everything is streaming. So, do you believe that they will find an equitable way to solve those issues?
Well, there's also the concept that you left out of AI, which there also is part of their demands of not wanting studios to screw over writers by saying, "Oh, it was written by AI." So that's another part of it as well, which you know that they would absolutely do if these writers and the WGA was not fighting against it. You know, 100% that these studios would say, "Well, let's save a buck and say AI did it." And people would do that, unfortunately. But I don't think that they're going to settle. I think that if they were going to settle, it would have already been over with. But I think that they know what they deserve and they know their worth, and they're going to get it. So they're not going to sit here and get screwed by these studios anymore. These heads of the studios need to, I don't want to say they need to be punished a little bit, but I don't think they're getting it that this WGA is not just going to sit there and take it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone that would point out that ratings have gone down as the number of streaming services and the number of cable channels is now over, literally thousands of channels dividing up the piece of the pie to where network ratings have gone down and streaming numbers have gone. Well, streaming numbers now are impossible to get on the same level that we get box office figures or Nielsen ratings. But I do think it should be pointed out that for anyone saying, well, ratings have gone down on TV shows, and that is true, ratings have gone down across the board, including for stuff like the Super Bowl. However, if the studios were losing money from streaming, do we really think that Warner Brothers would have cut out so many titles from their library on HBO Max and now Max? Do we really think that all of these different streaming services would be cutting titles out if they weren't making money or if they weren't costing money? So I don't know if I'm making sense there. I'm talking gibberish.
No.
I'm talking
No,
gibberish.
you're not talking gibberish. So I think it's a mixture of a couple things. One, I think that unlike Netflix, which this is odd to say, but they have too much content, it's a little overwhelming. I think that like stuff like Max, I don't even like calling it Max, HBO Max. I think that they're kind of trimming the fat a little bit because while it is on their own service, which they own, sometimes they do have to pay these certain licenses to keep stuff on there. So why should they keep paying licensing fees and back-end fees or whatever for these shows that no one theoretically is watching in comparison to stuff like The Last of Us, where maybe they can sell it to a smaller streamer, maybe like Crackle or Tubi or Roku, make some money and just kind of get rid of it, and then they have more space to be able to include these big budgeted shows and market them correctly, like stuff like Last of Us or Game of Thrones, not Game of Thrones season 2, House of the Dragon, like stuff like that.
And I guess that kind of clarified my point in terms of like, well, if it is costing HBO Max X dollars to have a program or a film just sitting there, then clearly the money is going somewhere to the producers or to whoever owns the film. So why not give the writers a share? They obviously wrote the darn thing in the first place. So yeah, I agree with you. It is a culling of the herd to a certain extent, but I think the writers should get their piece of the pie.
And if it does continue, then we're going to be talking about SAG going on strike and then the Directors Guild after that.
Yeah,
So it's a domino effect.
and the Directors Guild starts their negotiations, I believe, next week, and SAG the month after that. So we could be if all three went on strike at the same time, we could be having a perfect storm of work stoppages in and around Hollywood. So let's fingers crossed that they get these work stoppages solved soon. So all of the fall TV season and our Christmas movies for this year don't get affected as much. They will a little bit, but hopefully not. So, what's your prediction on when all this gets resolved? How much longer do you think the writer's strike goes on?
I'm going to say everything gets cleared up within 3 weeks. I think that's the longest that it prolongs is another 3 weeks. And even then, that would bring it to like what, a month and a half of a strike, which is half the length as the one in 2008.
And currently this week, the WGA has been setting up picket lines outside of the upfronts for several different companies, including NBC Universal. So hopefully these work stoppages get resolved soon, and we get our entertainment back. We get the writers paid, and we get the entertainment back on the screens, big and small.
Everyone's happy.
Yes, we get everything streaming, and honestly, too, let the writers get a piece of the streaming pie. If they're in the kitchen making the food, they should get a cut of the check. Moving on to our next story. This is a sad wrap up, but Rust, which was Alec Baldwin's movie where the cinematographer was accidentally shot and killed a year and a half ago, has wrapped production, has finished up production. They started up a month ago, and they have now wrapped on Rust 19 months, roughly, after the shooting that killed the cinematographer. What are your thoughts on Rust wrapping up? Should this be a film that was finished, and should this film be released? And would you go see this film if it's released in theaters or streaming?
All right, so we got a couple different questions there, which is fine. Let's start with, should this movie have continued to be made? So right now, yes, and I say that because, let me get my notes here. Matthew Hutchins, which is the widow of Helena, who died in October of 2021, he has settled a wrongful death lawsuit with Baldwin, and he's serving as a executive producer on the film. So with the widower behind the film now, I'm going to say yes, that it is okay that they continued. I don't want to say that he gave his blessing, nothing like that, but he at least is able to make sure that his wife's vision is able to continue with the film, and that there's probably going to be a memoriam and like stuff like that. So if he wasn't involved with the afterwards process, then it would just, to me, feel a little icky. But as far as the movie being released, I know that it has Alec Baldwin in it and Jensen Ackles in it from Supernatural. I don't see this movie getting a theatrical release, to be honest. And if it does, it's going to be very, very, very limited. I see this as more of they're going to sell it to Netflix type deal or something like Netflix, because I don't think that they want to be doing press for this movie, because all anyone's going to be talking about is what happened in October or what happened with the court. So I think that they maybe want to avoid the press. And without press, if you put it in the theaters, I don't see it doing very well. I think that this is just going to go straight to streaming. I just don't know where. And as far as would I watch it, it really, really depends on the trailer. And I read a summary of it, which sounded kind of interesting, but I'm just not really a fan of Westerns, to be honest. It's nothing to do with the production or Alec Baldwin or the script. I'm just really not a fan of Westerns. So the trailer really has to sell me for me to watch this movie, whether it be at home or in theaters.
I'm the same way with you. I am not a huge Western fan in terms of genre. Uh, Individual Western, sure, but I'm the same way. Where if there's a good trailer for it, then sure I'll go see it. Like 3:10 to Yuma is a great film. Tombstone, great film. But as a genre, I'm also not a huge fan of Westerns. Nothing wrong with that. It's just it's for some reason Westerns don't speak to me as much. I also think that yes, I agree with you with the lawsuit with the cinematographer's widower with her husband, her surviving husband. I agree. It
Matthew.
should be. It
Yep.
should. Yeah, it should be finished. I think it's. And if this is one that can be set up in memoriam or scholarship funds can be set up, that sort of thing, where in any way her family can get some financial assistance as a result of any sort of success for this film, I am definitely all for that. And this is not the
I
first
just
film.
don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I don't. I just don't see this movie getting a release like John Wick or Mario. Like I just don't see Alec Baldwin going on these talk shows saying, "Oh, like check out my movie." It's how I just think they're
Yeah.
gonna try and avoid all that, and I just don't see this getting a 4,600 theater release across the nation.
Yeah, no, I agree with you too. I believe that this will be a streaming service type thing, a Tubi, Crackle, any one of those services. Because this is not a 4 quadrant movie. It sounds like this is a small independent movie, and I agree. It sounds like something that would be on Netflix to kind of round out their release schedule, um, give people something to watch on a down week somewhere where they commit to having at least one feature film per week. This could be that one feature film that they release on a down week. So and yeah, I can't imagine that there would be a big press push. I do imagine though that there might be some sort of like a late night talk show. Alec Baldwin goes on and talks about how they set up a scholarship fund for the children of the cinematographer or something like that, and in spite of all that, this is the last example of her work, and yada yada yada. It could be like a memorial thing. So I could see a little bit something like that, but I can't imagine that they would have a big Grauman's Chinese Theater red carpet with limousines pulling up left and right and people in tuxedos for a big giant red carpet. Yeah, I agree with you. This seems like a movie that would go straight to streaming. Moving on to our fifth and final story for the day. We have an interesting development in the streaming world of Disney Plus. We are going to be getting a Marvel Cinematic Universe streaming show released the entire season on Disney Plus at the same time, in the same way that Netflix normally does. And Disney Plus has not done this before as of yet. So this will be a first. We're going to be getting Echo, which is a character that I had never heard of before I read this article. But this is a character that appeared on Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye streaming series. And it is featuring a hearing-impaired Native American character. So they're going to be doing a little bit of experiment to see how this performs. I have not watched Disney Plus. I don't have it as of yet as a subscription service. It's on the back burner of things I need to sign up for to catch up on everything. But what are your thoughts on this series being released Netflix style, dump and binge the entire season in one sitting?
I don't think this is an experiment at all. I think that they're trying to make something negative sound like a positive. I think the show is just really bad, and they're like, "Oh man, let's just dump it all on the same day, and then we get a weekend of negative reviews, and then we don't have to worry about it again." Because if it's a 7 or 8 episode season, every single week people are going to be talking about how bad this show is, or maybe one week they have a good episode. But I think overall, I don't think it's a good show, and they realize that. There's also production delays a couple months back, and this is a character that not a lot of people know. She was introduced in Hawkeye, which one that wasn't a really good season as well. Hawkeye kind of let me down, and Echo wasn't even the standout character in that series. If anything, they should have done a Hawkeye season 2, but with Kate Bishop's character, and just call it Hawkeye, but focus on Kate Bishop, who was played by Haley Steinfeld.
Yeah.
She's the one who replaced Hawkeye at the end of the series. He kind of, you know, they're doing that now with all the older MCU people, giving the younger generation the ropes. But this isn't a character.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
This just isn't a character that's very popular. This isn't a character that had any standout scenes in the Hawkeye series. The Hawkeye series was mediocre. It was just very, very odd that they even did this. And the only reason that I think they did do this is maybe they thought going into Hawkeye that this would be the standout character, which it didn't turn out to be. And then we have Daredevil, Born Again coming out next year, and Echo and Daredevil and Kingpin all share a connection in that world. So I think that maybe this is just going to be like an epilogue for Daredevil. As far as it being experimental, that's complete BS, because they would have done that with Secret Invasion if it was experimental. They would have done that with Loki, which is coming out on October 6th, if it was experimental. Why are you waiting until November to try and experiment? Secret Invasion comes out next month. Do it next month.
Yeah.
But they know it's not up to par with what it should be.
Now, what were your thoughts on the character of Echo when you saw her in Hawkeye?
Some characters are meant to be side characters. Honestly, no, it's a good side character, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good lead. Look at The Hangover. Yeah. Zach Galifianakis' character played Alan. His name was Alan in The Hangover. He's an excellent side character. I do not want to see a full Hangover spinoff of Alan. He's not a lead character. He's a side character. Maybe that's not the best example, but that's the first one I could think of.
No, but that's a great example. Yeah, could you imagine Zach Galifianakis in his own streaming series, surrounded by
Hangover,
people?
Alan gets lost, or something like that. I don't know.
And somehow Alan is surrounded by people who are even crazier than Alan is. Yeah, he would be outshined in his own crazy spinoff streaming series. That's a good point.
So,
yeah,
what about you? Is Echo going to make you sign up for Disney Plus?
Well, no. I've been planning to sign up for Disney Plus for a while now, and I just, between HBO Max and Netflix, and obviously all the new releases that are coming out, I just haven't gotten around to signing up to a point where I would sit down and watch all of the Star Wars and Marvel series that are on Disney Plus that are in the backlog that I really do need to watch at some point. But given all of the controversy that was surrounding She-Hulk and the seemingly self-admitted by Disney after the fact lack of quality control on some of the streaming shows, that doesn't give me confidence in the quality of Echo moving forward, especially when I haven't heard of this character before, and having not seen Hawkeye yet. And I like Hawkeye. I do like Hawkeye. I like original characters, so the fact that they were doing a Christmas time series on Hawkeye, I love the idea of it, but before they announced this series was coming out, I had never even heard of this character before, and hadn't known that she was going to be getting her own series. So that doesn't that entire series being, or that entire season being released at once in one Netflix-like blow to the solar plexus of viewing habits. It's not motivating me to watch this series or sign up for Disney Plus any more than I was before. So I do think it is an interesting move, but you're right. I think if they had confidence in this series, they would do more of their traditional release method in terms of having one, starting with one or two or three episodes as premiere, and then one episode per week. After that, just try and milk the viewers into signing up or staying around longer. So, yeah,
I mean,
I'm not particularly motivated by this to sign up for Disney Plus just so I can binge.
It's also a word of mouth. It's also a word of mouth thing when you do something week by week. Look at The Last of Us. If you pulled up the numbers for The Last of Us, every week the numbers went up because people watched it, and then they told people to watch it, and then they told people to watch it. And that's why at the end of the series, you saw an amount that was nearly double what it started with viewership. I mean, I was telling my mom about The Last of Us. I was telling everyone. I was like, you got to watch this. And if you just drop everything on one day, if I tell someone, hey, go watch Echo, and then they click on it and they see it's 8 episodes, an hour long each, they're going to be like, well, I'm 8 episodes behind. Like, it's such a commitment. Like, but if it's week by week, then it's a routine that they can start to get into. Okay, every Wednesday, I'm going to make dinner, and by the time dinner's ready, it will be the new episode of Echo, and it becomes almost like a routine for 7 or 8 weeks.
It'll be appointment television and not just bingeable content that you're going to avoid sleep for one night just to finish out the series order. Yeah, I agree also, because we've been seeing, especially with like Succession coming to an end, and all of these high profile streaming series and other streaming services that are getting a lot of positive publicity, that are getting a lot of people that are watching them and watching each week. So, yeah, I tend to agree that this is not a good look for Echo coming out. So, yeah, and Echo definitely will not be on my top list of motivations to sign up for Disney Plus. But I do hear that Loki season 1 was really good. So Loki season 2 coming out in October might be a good fall watch as we after summer movie season.
Also, WandaVision.
Oh yes, WandaVision as well.
And WandaVision's the best thing that Disney Plus has put out in terms of like Marvel, and then honestly, probably Loki season 1 is the second best.
Nice. And for those Elizabeth Olsen lovers, Love and Blood on HBO Max is actually pretty good. And there's one episode left of that. It was just a 5-episode series. So 5 episodes so far, 6 episodes total, 1 left to go. So if anyone is getting what has an Elizabeth Olsen fixation and they have to meet that need, Love and Blood is actually absolutely worth watching. Very suburban, very 80s, but all Elizabeth Olsen all the time. Well, that's it. That's all the news headlines that I have for this. Any other topics that you'd like to bring up, Trace, in terms of stories that have been going on this week?
I think as far as like some of the bigger topics. I think that we covered like a good chunk, and if someone was out of the loop, uh, I feel like I feel like me and you were very informative. That if they don't feel that they got enough information, we at least gave them a jumping off point for them to go look more into the writer's strike or look into box office. And I think that we went through some really good topics today.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is the kind of thing that I want to do in terms of inspiring discussion, inspiring conversation, and not just reading articles verbatim, but actually having a discussion about the articles, about the news stories that are going on in the world of entertainment. So I had a good time doing this as an experiment. What are your thoughts on the experiment so far?
I had an excellent time. I have done something similar to this on my own channel when I first started, not to the extent of a live stream, but just talking about movie news. And I think that you're going to be surprised how many people aren't aware of certain things going on. So I think that this sort of format can be very informative for people, and it's also really fun to just discuss as well.
And as an opportunity to discuss ongoing stories like the writer's strike and the box office run for a single theatrical release, and following, could there be an underwhelming opening weekend, and then word of mouth drives a film to be a huge financial success, like Everything Everywhere All at Once was. That was the film that just sort of was a snowball going downhill and just caught this freight train of people, word of mouth, going to theaters. So that's sort of one of the things that I like, or that I'm hoping to do with this. So, what is coming on to your channel this week? What can people look forward to watching on Pierce Productions?
So for Pierce Productions, while I do love doing stuff like this, I'm on a little bit of hiatus on my own channel. But I absolutely love going on my friends' channels and hanging out and doing exactly what I did today with you. But as far as my own content, I'm on a little bit of a hiatus right now.
Yes. And what are you planning to be watching in the next week or two in theaters as it comes out?
Excellent. Also follow up. So definitely F9 is going to be coming out. So that's something that this weekend I'm checking out. Evil Dead is my favorite all-time franchise, so I need to go see Evil Dead Rise one more time before it leaves theaters. And then finally, Always Sunny in Philadelphia is one of my favorite movie. Actually, I got two finals. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is one of my favorite TV shows ever, and Charlie Day wrote and directed his own movie called Fool's Paradise. So I'm going to be wanting to check that out. It also co-stars Ray Liotta in one of his final roles. So I need to check that out. And then tonight at 7:15, I already have my ticket. The Blackberry movie I'm also going to be checking out, which has Always Sunny star alumni Glenn Howerton, and it is about the production of the Blackberry. So I think last time me and you did a live stream, we were talking about um, Air, the Michael Jordan movie, and The Founder with Michael Keaton,
Yeah,
about how these stories of, well, how did this brand or company become what it was? So I'm going to be checking out one of those movies tonight and figure out a little history about BlackBerry.
absolutely. And Jay Baruchel also in Blackberry now. So that
That's right.
that is
Yes.
a really good list of movies to watch. So Trace Pierce, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a part of this grand experiment on Dragon Movie Guy. Thank you for coming on, and I will say goodbye to everyone watching, and we'll see you